Hey guys, Luke on Sean's channel. As you can probably hear from my voice, I'm really excited. I'm so happy. Engage is finally at 3. This ban list has actually served us really well in terms of Sky Strikers. A lot of annoying floodgates have either been limited or banned altogether, so that's really good. This deck is even more powerful from that. Not only that, a bunch of monsters were banned, like Barone and Borlo Savage Dragon, so just like big generic negating dudes are no longer an issue. And of course, the big thing of all, Engage is finally at 3. This ban list has served us really well. It didn't really help a lot of my other decks, but Sky Strikers are definitely just gone up so much in terms of potential, so I'm really excited to get into this. If you guys already checked out one of my previous videos that I've made recently enough on the channel, I talked about the different ways that you can play Sky Strikers, and in that I kind of reviewed that my favorite way to play Sky Strikers is Blind Second. I just find that that's probably the most fun way to play them, probably the most optimal in some circumstances. I just find it to be really good. So this is a Blind Second Sky Striker deck profile you're about to see. But what I will say is what I'm really excited about this video is that this deck profile is going to be relevant all the way past June. In June we get Battles of Legend Terminal Revenge that's going to be releasing on the 21st. It's another good like 2 months away, but there's a few Sky Striker cards that are going to be released in that. And I'm actually going to be talking about them in this profile because there's actually a few that we will use from that set in this profile. So whether you're watching this deck profile right now in April or you're looking at past June, this deck profile will still be relevant, and this is the profile I'll definitely be playing with at least a good couple of months. So without further ado, I'm really excited. Let's just get into Sky Strikers. Starting things off strong, we already run 3 copies of Ray. I talk about Ray so much in this channel, it feels repetitive to have to say it again, but in case you guys are new to Sky Strikers, I'll just run by what she does and I'll go through every other card as well. So the reason why Ray is so good and why you want to optimize it at 3 copies is because she's really good for recovery in this deck. So Sky Strikers, you don't really clog up your main monster zone. It's all about using your extra monster zone by going into your Sky Striker Link 1 monsters in order to get their effects, to break down opponents' boards, or just control the game state. The reason why Ray is so good and why it's quintessential to have her at 3 in this build is because her graveyard effect is really good. If Ray's in the graveyard and a face-up Sky Striker Ace Link monster you control is destroyed battle or leaves the field because of an opponent's card effect, you can special summon this card, which is just really good. A lot of interruptions now involves destroying your monsters. So say if your opponent is able to destroy either a Shizuku or a Kigari on the field, Ray's able to bring itself back out, so you're not going to be stuck looking for material to go into your monsters the following turn. Not only is this recovery effect really good, but Ray also has another effect that's actually a quick effect you can activate during your opponent's turn. So her quick effect reads that you can tribute this card and special summon 1 Sky Striker Ace monster from your extra deck, 3 extra monster zone. Which is really good because we're in a situation where during your opponent's turn he destroys one of your Sky Striker Link monsters. What you're able to do is just bring out Ray from the graveyard, and then you're able to activate Ray's quick effect in order to go into one of your other Sky Striker monsters that turn and get some benefits of that. So it's really important that you optimize 3 copies of Ray. She's the best starter, great recovery, 3 copies is absolutely essential. We run 1 copy of Rose as well. So Rose isn't as good as Ray of course, but she still serves a really good big purpose in this deck. She's even more important now when you pair it with a card we're going to be talking about next, which is a new card going to be releasing in June. But Rose is really good because she is a light attribute Sky Striker monster. This goes really well when we're talking about linkage. So if you're activating linkage and you have a light and dark Sky Striker monster in your graveyard, i.e. your Ray and your Rose, you're able to make that monster you bring out with linkage gain 1000 attack, which of course is just really good. And it's really good for the linkage OTK. But Rose still has purposes on her own as well, which make her really good. So if a Sky Striker monster is normal special summoned, you can actually special summon her from the hand. So if you have Rose and Ray in your hand and you kind of like want to get them both into graveyard as quickly as possible, what you're able to do is normal summon your Ray and then use Rose effect to special summon it out and go instantly for a Link 2, which can be very good. Not only that, Rose actually has a pretty decent secondary effect which can come in handy sometimes as well, where if she's in the graveyard and your opponent's monster in the extra monster zone destroy a battle or leaves the field because of your card effect, you can actually special summon this card and then you can negate the effects of 1 face-up monster your opponent controls on the end of this turn as well. Which of course isn't really as good as Ray, but still very good. Definitely run 1 copy of Rose. I know when linkage first came out, people were kind of playing around with running 2 copies of Rose, but that will not be essential anymore because there's a new card that's coming out in June. And the card that I'm talking about is called Pillar of the Future Cyanos. Cyanos will always be treated as a Sky Striker card, so you can search him off of Engage, you can dump him off of Hyotide, the works. Cyanos, I will only run a 1 copy in this deck. If he performs well in the TCG kind of later on, I might consider running him at more than 1, but I've done a lot of deck testing with this on Nexus, and I find 1 copy is more than enough. So his effect reads that you can discard 1 spell, special summon this card from your hand. And if this card is normal or special summoned, you can special summon 1 Sky Striker Ace Rose from your deck or graveyard. After you do that, you're locked into machine monsters from your extra deck, but that really doesn't matter at the end of the day. Reason why this is so good is because you can instantly go for some of your Link 2 Sky Striker monsters to kind of get your plays going. But not only that, considering we also run Pot of Desires in this build, it's really good to get Rose out so we don't banish it off of Desires. Secondary effect that Cyanos also has is that you can banish this card from your graveyard and take one of your Sky Striker Ace Rose as either banished or in your graveyard and either add to your hand or special summon it. You can only use each effect of Cyanos once per turn. Reason why that's so good is because although we're really going into the depths of Fire format right now, in case your opponent is running a deck that runs Bystials and they know how critical it is to banish your Rays and your Rose, since Rose is only run at 1 copy, it's really good to have a sort of recycling effect by using Cyanos. So I definitely recommend running this card at 1. It's going to be released on June 21st. Not much is said right now on how expensive it's going to be, what rarity it is, but if you can get your hands on 1 copy, more than enough for this build. So 1 copy of Cyanos. I run 1 copy of Surgical Striker Hamp. Hamp, of course, is always treated as a Sky Striker card, just like Cyanos as well. This is actually the kaiju of the deck. What I really like about some decks is that they have searchable kaiju, such as Cyber Dragon, and Sky Strikers are no exception. The reason why we main deck this is because this, of course, as I said, is a blind second build, which I think is probably the most optimal way to play Sky Strikers now. So having a kaiju we're able to search in order to get rid of some of our opponent's more problematic monsters is just really good. You can only use them as a kaiju if you have a Sky Striker Ace monster already on your field, which is really no problem at all. Most of the time your opponent's not really expecting this to happen, so if they let the summon of Ray or Rose just go through, you're able to instantly kaiju one of their monsters. That's of course if you want to. Hamp also has the ability to special summon itself to your side of the field just for the cost of attributing 1 monster. What I really like about Hamp as well is that he only has 2500 attack, so it's not a big attack stat to have to get over, because he actually has an effect when he's destroyed by battle that you can target 1 card your opponent controls and destroy it. So even if we kaiju him over to our opponent's side of the field and if we beat over him by battle, since he goes to our graveyard, we're able to activate that effect or just pop another one of our opponent's cards. So I find it to be really good. So 1 copy of Hamp, more than enough for this build. Now hand traps can be switched out depending on the matchup. There are a lot that we run in the side deck as well. I just think 3 copies of Ash Blossom is still really important to main deck. I know it's Fire format, so you're probably better off not main decking this, but I think it's just too powerful to ignore, especially if you're going against Branded or even some of the other decks that are going to be popping up in the next couple of months. I definitely think Ash Blossom is important to run 3 copies in the build. Also run 2 copies of Droll and Lockbird. Droll and Lockbird, of course, is just a really good hand trap. But not only that, Droll and Lockbird actually really messes up this deck as well. So it's good to run at least 1 copy in your own deck just so you can have it as a target for your cross out designators as well. So 2 copies of Droll and Lockbird, definitely essential to run. Going into the spells now, of course, 3 copies of Engage, newly unlimited. This is so good to finally be able to say that. Honestly, I've actually never played Sky Strikers where Engage was at 3 copies. I started getting into Sky Strikers as soon as Engage went to 1, and I've been obsessed with the deck ever since. So the fact that we're able to run at 3 copies now, it just feels like an absolute dream. Engage, of course, is the searcher of this deck, so if you control no monsters in your main monster zone, add 1 Sky Striker card from your deck to your hand. That's any Sky Striker card, so that includes both your monsters and your spells. But not only that, for those of you who don't know, pretty much all Sky Striker cards have their primary effect and also have their secondary effect if it meets the condition of having 3 or more spells in the graveyard on activation. So Engage, you can use the primary effect to search, but also if you have 3 or more spells in your graveyard on activation, you can actually just draw a card as well, which of course is just really good. A handy +2, considering the amount of spells we run in this deck. It's very easy for us to get to 3 in the graveyard, no problem at all. I'm so happy to finally be able to say, run 3 copies of Engage, essential for the build. My second favorite Sky Striker spell now, we run 3 copies of Widow Anchor. Widow Anchor is really good. It's a quick play spell that if you control no monster in your main monster zone, target 1 face-up effect monster on the field and negate that monster's effect. And also if you meet the conditions that you have 3 spells 3 or more spells in the graveyard on activation, you can actually take control of that monster. So this is really good for stealing some of your opponent's like problematic monsters, so you're able to just link them off so that your opponent doesn't get them again during the end phase. But not only that, but considering that this is a quick play spell, we can actually activate it during our opponent's turn if we set it in the back row as well. So that can be really good at not only negating your opponent's effects, but also you're able to steal that monster in your opponent's turn too, so it kind of stops them from using it as link material or synchro summoning using that card. So I definitely recommend running 3 copies of Widow Anchor, definitely essential for the build. The last Sky Striker spell we run a playset of is 3 copies of Linkage. Linkage is really good. Although Ray is the best starter in the build, Linkage is really good in case we get stuck, considering how there's only 3 Ray and 1 Rose in like a 45 card build, so it's kind of hard to see that opening every game. So Linkage is still really good. If you activate Linkage, you're locked into a special summoning Sky Striker ace monsters for the rest of the turn, but that's no problem at all. On turns you're activating Linkage is either just for a good starter, or you're going for a Linkage OTK. But the reason why a Linkage is so good is that its effect reads that you can send 1 card you control to the graveyard, and if you do, special summon 1 Sky Striker ace monster from your extra deck to the extra monster zone. This is just really good at getting their Sky Striker link monsters started so they can get off with their plays without having to use Ray or Rose. But not only that, Linkage, as I mentioned earlier, has a secondary effect that if you have at least 1 light and 1 dark Sky Striker ace monster in your graveyard or on the field, the monster special summoned off of Linkage gains 1000 attack. So that's really good for boosting your Sky Striker monsters up to a good amount of attack, at least 2500. So you're able to beat over some of the opponent's more bigger problematic monsters. So 3 copies of Linkage, essential to run this build. Another starter if we get stuck is 1 copy of Hornet Drones. Hornet Drones simply reads that if you control a monster main monster zone, special summon 1 Sky Striker ace token to the field, which of course you can use for some of your link plays. This is the last Sky Striker card that's limited on the ban list, but honestly I think that's where it belongs. I really don't see this card coming back. There's too many decks can take advantage of it and just run Sky Strikers in Engine, which I don't think is right at all. So I definitely just think Hornet Drones should stay at 1, and I'm more than happy. Once we got Engage back, I'm satisfied. So 1 copy of Hornet Drones is all we need. Also run 1 copy of Shark Cannon. Shark Cannon is another quick play that has the effect that you can target 1 monster in your opponent's graveyard and you can banish that monster, which of course is really good considering that your graveyard is pretty much becoming your second hand in Yu-Gi-Oh! So if your opponent has some monsters in the graveyard that are able to have like some crazy effects in there, it's really good having Shark Cannons able to banish it. But not only that, Shark Cannon also has the secondary effect that if you have 3 or more spell cards on activation of this, you can actually special summon that monster to your field instead, which can be good, but of course the downside is that that monster can't attack. But it can be good for link plays and stuff, depending on how far we are in the game state. And also 1 copy of Afterburners. Afterburners is great, simply reads that if you control no monster in your main monster zone, target 1 face-up monster on the field and destroy it. And has a secondary effect, if you have 3 more spells, you can destroy 1 spell or trap on the field as well. So 1 copy of each of these cards, I think is more than enough, all you need for the build. We run 1 copy of Multi-Roll. Multi-Roll is really good. It's the continuous spell in Sky Strikers. So what you can do with this, once per turn, target 1 other card you control, send to the graveyard, and then your opponent cannot activate cards or effects in response to your spell card activations for the rest of its turn. But not only that, once per turn during the end phase, you can set Sky Striker spells with different names from your graveyard to the number of Sky Striker spell cards you activated this turn, while this card is face up on the field, but you need to banish them when they leave the field. Which of course is really good. It's great for recycling some of our quick play Sky Striker spells, such as our Widow Anchor and our Shark Cannon, which we can just reset in order to activate them during our opponent's turn as well, which I find to just be really good. So 1 copy of Multi-Roll is absolutely essential, but it also goes really well with Area Zero. Area Zero is the field spell of Sky Strikers. It has the effect that you can target 1 other card you control, excavate the top 3 cards of your deck, and if you do, add 1 excavated Sky Striker card to your hand, also shuffle the rest into the deck. And then if you added a Sky Striker card, you need to send that card that you targeted to the graveyard, which is quite good, but the main reason Area Zero works really well with Multi-Roll is that Multi-Roll has the effect that you can target 1 card you control send to the graveyard. So if you're activating Multi-Roll and you send Area Zero has an effect at a graveyard. If it's sent to the graveyard by a card effect, you can special summon 1 Sky Striker Ace monster directly from your deck, which of course is just another really good way to get to your Sky Striker Ace Ray. So 1 copy each is all you need. Considering that Engage is now at 3, you have no problem searching these guys out. Speaking of more ways to search Ray, 1 copy of Reinforcing the Army, of course, is just really good. Not only does it search Ray, but it's also under a spell name that we have in the graveyard in order to pop off even more with our Sky Striker spells. So 1 copy of Rhoda. Considering that this is a blind second build, we want to run a lot of board breakers, so 3 copies of Forbidden Droplet is arguably one of the best board breakers that have been printed in a long time. Droplet is a quick play spell that reads that you can send any number of other cards from your hand and or field to the graveyard and choose that many effect monsters your opponent controls, and at the end of this turn their attack is halved. Also, their effects are negated, which of course is just absolutely insane. I find drops to be even better than Dark Ruler no more in that sense. Not only that, in response to this card's activation, your opponent cannot activate cards or effects of cards with the same original type, such as monster, spell, trap, as the cards sent to the graveyard by this effect. Meaning that if you activate Forbidden Droplet and you send a monster, a spell, and a trap, your opponent can't activate monster, spells, or traps in response to this card's activation. However, say if you activate Droplet and you send a spell and a trap, your opponent can still respond with monster effects, so be very careful with how you activate Droplet and what you're sending in order to get it to pop off. But still, 3 copies is definitely very important. Keeping up with the board breakers, I run 2 copies of Raigeki. I would love to run this at 3, however I just can't find the room. I think it's just really hard to run 3 copies of Raigeki, but it's still a game-changing card if it's able to pop off. Raigeki simply reads destroy all monsters your opponent controls. If your opponent has no response to the activation of this, they just lose their entire board, which is really great. It's especially good if you're going against a rogue deck like Heroes or whatever that don't really have an easy way to respond to Raigeki. So 2 copies, absolutely great in this build. Considering we run Thrust as well, it's really easy to search out too, depending on the game state, so 2 copies more than enough for the build. This is a going second build, so Change of Heart of course is really good. You target 1 monster your opponent controls and take control of that into the end phase. You can do whatever you want with that monster then. You can use it to attack your opponent, you can use it for link plays, you can activate its effect. It really doesn't matter. Change of Heart, definitely a really good card. Definitely run it over Mind Control if you can, because this guy is also a normal spell, so of course you're able to search it off of your 2 copies of Triple Tactics Thrust. Thrust is just an absolutely insane card. I definitely recommend you run it if you can. It's a normal spell that reads, if your opponent has activated a monster effect during your turn, you can set 1 normal spell or trap directly from your deck. But if your opponent controls a monster, you can add it to your hand instead. The set card cannot be activated this turn. However, if you do add the card to your hand instead, it can be activated that turn, which of course is just really good. Thrust works a lot better considering that this is a blind second build. So most of the time your opponent definitely has a monster on the field in order for you to just add the card directly to your hand. This can be really good at searching some of your board breakers like Raigekis, or even some of your starters like Engage. So 2 copies of Thrust I find to be really important. The way Yu-Gi-Oh has gone is that your opponent's always activating effects during your turn anyways, so it's very likely that they're going to activate a monster effect during your turn, so Thrust is just really good to have. Now the close friend of Thrust, we have Triple Tactics Talent. Talent is really good. It's becoming a staple in most decks. It has the effect that if your opponent activates a monster effect during your main phase, you can activate 1 of these effects. Either draw 2 cards, take control of 1 monster your opponent controls into the end phase, or you can look at your opponent's hand and choose 1 card from it and shuffle it into the deck. Considering how prevalent hand traps are in the game, I'd be really tempted to run it at 3 copies, but considering we run the 2 copies of Thrust, it's really not necessary considering that we can just use Thrust to search talent anyways. But I definitely recommend if you can run it at 2 copies, definitely run it. We run 2 copies of Pot of Desires. We want more draw power in this deck if we can. It's definitely really good to have. Pot of Desires, you banish 10 cards from the top of your deck face down and draw 2 cards. Pretty straightforward. Draw 2, get another spell in the graveyard. Yeah, you banish 10, but all the cards you run 1 copy of can easily be gotten to before you have to activate Desires. So I definitely recommend running it at 2 copies in this build. Considering this leans more towards combo, definitely 1 copy of Call by the Grave is essential so we don't get interrupted. Not only that, Call by the Grave is just a really good disruptful card, so I definitely recommend running it in pretty much every deck. But not only that, considering we really don't want to get interrupted at all, 2 copies of Crossout Designator I find to be really important too. The main targets we have with Crossout Designator, of course, is the Ash and the Drow and the Imperm, all the basic stuff that kind of like really messes up our combos. So I think it's really important that we don't let any of those interruptions happen. So 2 copies of Crossout Designator is a good way to kind of stop that from happening. Rounding things off with the traps now, 2 copies of Infinite Impermanence. Imperm is just a really good hand trap. Not only does it serve a purpose that we can Crossout Designator it, but it's also just a really good hand trap to interrupt your opponent as well. Consider how prevalent it is in the game in general, it's a really good crossout target too. 2 copies of Imperm, all you need for this build, and then rounding us off, we run 2 copies of Evenly Matched. Again, I reiterate, this is a blind second build, so having all the board breakers you can is definitely really, really important. And 2 copies of Evening Match, arguably the best board breaker in the game. I definitely recommend it. 2 copies is all you need to round off this deck. Going into the extra deck now, 3 copies of Kagari. Kagari is probably my favorite Sky Striker Link monster. When she's special summoned, you can target 1 Sky Striker spell in the graveyard and add it to your hand. Not only is that really, really good for recycling your Engage or some of your other more powerful spells that you're able to combo off with, but Kagari also has the effect that she gains 100 attack for each spell in the graveyard. Not just Sky Striker spell, any spell at all, so she can get up to a ridiculous amount of attack, especially when you're pairing her with Linkage. So 3 copies of Kagari, definitely maximize it if you can. 3 copies of Shizuku I find to be really, really important as well. Shizuku's effect's kind of like the opposite of Kagari in the sense that rather than increasing her attack by 100 for each spell, she actually decreases your opponent's monster's attack by 100 for each spell in the graveyard. But not only that, Shizuku has an effect that during the end phase, if she was special summoned this turn, you can add 1 Sky Striker spell from your deck to your hand with a different name from the cards in the graveyard, which has really, really good synergy with multi-roll, so I definitely recommend maximizing the copies of Shizuku in the build. 2 copies of Hayate. Hayate is of course really, really good. She can actually attack your opponent's life points directly, which may not seem like a lot considering she's only 1500 attack, but please remember that if she's brought out using Linkage to its full potential, she can actually be 2500, which can attack directly. Really, really good. Not only that, after damage calculation, if this card battled, just battled in general, if it battled the opponent's monster or your opponent's life points directly, you can send 1 Sky Striker card from your deck to the graveyard, which is really, really good considering that happens during the damage step. It's really hard for your opponent to interrupt it with Imperm or Ash or anything like that. So 2 copies of Hayate, definitely very essential for this build. I'm always torn in between playing the 3 copies of Hayate or having 1 copy of Kena to replace that 3rd copy of Hayate. For the time being though, I'm definitely going to still stick with Kena. I just think that she can be really, really good. So when Kena is special summoned, you can target 1 face-up monster your opponent controls and they cannot attack until the end of your opponent's turn. So that's really, really good at buying you time considering how prevalent illusion monsters are becoming now. This can be really, really good at kind of like messing up the Chimera OTK in a sense. If you bring Kena out off of Linkage, so I definitely think it's important to run a 1 copy. So as a secondary effect that doesn't really come up too often. However, if we're getting really, really tight on time come game 3, Kena also has the effect that each time a Sky Striker spell card is resolved while she's facing on the field, you gain 100 life points immediately after the effect resolves. It's a really, really good way to increase your life points and win in time. So 1 copy of Kena, definitely really good to have in this build. Next up, we run 1 copy of Zeke. Zeke, of course, is really, really good. All it needs is 2 monsters, including a Sky Striker Ace monster in order to go into him. When Zeke is Link summoned, you can target 1 face-up monster on the field and just banish it until your opponent's next end phase, which of course can be really, really good for getting rid of some of your opponent's monsters. Not only that, Zeke has the effect that once per turn you can target 1 other card you control. This card gains 1000 attack and then send that card to the graveyard, which is pretty decent, but honestly most of the time the reason why Zeke is here is just so when we're stealing our opponent's monsters off of Change of Heart, Talons, or Widow Anchor, we're able to get rid of it easily by linking it away for a Sky Striker monster. So that's one of the main reasons Zeke's here. So 1 copy is more than you need for this build. Next up, we're going to be talking about a card that hasn't been released yet. But again, just like Cynos is going to be coming in June. Slot is reserved for Sky Striker Ace Camellia. Camellia only needs 2 effect monsters in order to go into her. So it's going to be really, really good if you have 3 spells in the graveyard and you're able to just steal your opponent's monsters with Widow Anchor or Change of Heart or whatever to get your plays going immediately. The reason why Camellia is so good is the fact that she has the effect that once per turn, if you have 3 or less spells in your graveyard, you can send 1 Sky Striker card from your deck to the graveyard, which is just really, really good. Considering the fact that we might not always have 3 spells in the graveyard, it's really, really good to have Camille to kind of like boost up the numbers, or just being able to straight up dump the card that we really, really want. Considering that Camille is a Sky Striker monster, if you're able to just bring her out instantly and then you're able to dump something like say Engage, what you can do is just link Camille for Kagari, then Kagari can add that Engage directly from the graveyard straight to your hand, which of course is really, really good to get your combo started. Camille also has the effect that if this card is sent to the graveyard, you can target 1 monster your opponent controls, special summon this card to your field, and if you do, send that monster to the graveyard. Also shift control to this card's owner during the end phase of this turn, which of course can be really, really good. Of course that effect happens immediately after it's sent to the graveyard, so there's no real good way of timing it. If we're in a situation where you have to go first, Camille's just good at starting the combos. But again, this is a blind second build, so there can be a really good way that we can take advantage of Camille, go into her to start off her combos, and then immediately when she's sent to the graveyard, we can kind of mess up her opponent's board even more. So I definitely recommend waiting until June and pick up a copy of this card. This is the card I've been excited for the most from Sky Strikers, and I definitely think it's going to be a mainstay staple for all Sky Striker builds after June, so definitely keep an eye out for that card. One copy of Camille, definitely essential for the build. I still like to run Dark Charmer Gloomy just because I find this to be really good if we're stealing some of our opponent's monsters. Having all the more generic-ish sort of Link 2s that we're able to just get rid of them instantly. And Dark is no exception for this. Considering we're going into Fire format, this might not be prevalent right now, but there's still going to be a lot of decks to just run Dark monsters anyways. I know Branded will still be playing. I know there'll be just a lot of different decks that still have Dark monsters. So if we're able to steal opponent's monsters and just link them off into cards like Dark, I definitely recommend running it in the build. Dark's really good for that, but also he's really great because you're able to just steal some of your opponent's Dark monsters that are already in their graveyard in order to get like a really powerful Dark monster onto your field. But not only that, even if you just want it to link climb, I definitely think it's really good. So one copy of Dark I'd still run in the Sky Striker build going forward. One copy of Unicorn, I think Unicorn is just really good generic Link tree. Taking a look at the Sky Striker Link trees and the other Sky Striker Link monster coming out, I don't think they're really as good. They don't hold a candle to Unicorn, so I think Unicorn's is going to be a staple for the time being. So definitely one copy of Unicorn for the build. I also like running Axis Code Talker. Axis Code Talker, absolutely insane Link monster. You guys already know what he does. He's just really great at destroying boards, going for an OTK, dealing big amount of damage and just completely messing up your opponent. Most time when we're ending with Axis Code Talker, the game is pretty much over from there. So I definitely recommend you guys run it in this build. And then the final card, you can run the third copy of Hayate instead if you want. You could run one of the more generic Link 2s or whatever. Even if you want to run some of the Sky Striker and new stuff. But I still run the one copy of Zeus. Decks that run Xyz will never go away. Xyz will always find a way into some form or another, no matter what the format is. And considering that Typhon is just the main staple for a lot of decks right now, if you're able to steal it with Change of Heart or whatever and overlay it, get it to attack and then overlay for Zeus, it's really good at having a board wipe and a big chunky monster to really mess up your opponent. I use Zeus a lot during cash format when like a Rise Heart was just being annoying and was able to steal it with Change of Heart and overlay into Zeus with like a lot of material, but I still think Zeus is really good to run. If you want to change with anything else, that's absolutely fine, but I still think that Zeus has a lot of potential going forward, and I just don't have the heart to take him out. So Zeus, a one copy, rounds off the extra deck. Going into the side deck now, this is where I like to see a lot of people get really creative. I'm very biased, and I think that my main deck is really strong. So I like to see people getting creative with the side deck. But here's what I'm running for the time being. I definitely think 2 copies of Nibiru is really good. Combo decks are just massive, and I don't see them calming down anytime soon. So 2 copies of Nibiru for the side deck I find to be really good. And considering that we run a lot of board breakers as well, we have no problem getting rid of a big token if it does get to a ridiculous amount of attack. So 2 copies I find to be really essential for the build. 2 copies of Ghost Belle, I'd really like to run this at 3 copies maybe. Perhaps you guys might be able to find some more room in the side deck that I'm about to show you. But just for the time being, I like to kind of play around with ideas, and this is definitely subject to change. Definitely at least 2 copies of Ghost Belle is really good. Not only is Ghost Belle really good because it kind of like messes up some of our opponents' decks such as Snake Eyes and the likes, but also considering that Ray brings itself out from the graveyard and we add a lot of spells from the graveyard to the hand, Ghost Belle is really good target for Crossout Designator if your opponent is siding Ghost Belle against you. Speaking of good Crossout Designator targets, DD Crow. I don't think DD Crow is going to be as big of a side deck option going forward, but I really like to run it, not only for the option of Crossout Designator, but also just because it's a really strong card in general. Considering that DD Crow can just banish any card from your opponent's graveyard, I think it's just really good. Not only is it banishing monsters, but also just cards that have graveyard effects I think can be really good. So 2 copies of DD Crow. Getting some spell and trap card removal of course is really essential too. So we'll run 1 copy of Harpy's Feather Duster and 2 Cosmic Cyclones. Spell/trap removal is just something that this deck really lacks, so I like to really have it prevalent in the side deck. I think it's just really important. Going down to the card I reluctantly still kept in the side deck is 3 copies of Dark Ruler No More. This can be subject to change, either like lower the ratios for Ghost Belle or just take it out entirely. But I still think it's really good for the time being. Again, this is a going second build, so we really want to disrupt our opponent as much as we possibly can. And finally, the card I know a lot of people will probably just be disregarding in general would definitely be Royal Decree. I still stand by the fact that this deck goes second no matter what. However, the only time this really struggles going second is if we're playing against a deck like Labyrinth. If you're going against Labyrinth and you're going game 2 or 3 or whatever, I definitely recommend you go first in those situations and side in Royal Decree, because you're able to flip it up and just completely knock at their plays altogether. Not only is Royal Decree really good at kind of stopping Labyrinth, but also it can really be disruptive for some of your opponent's other like gimmicks. Like say if they run evenly matched, say if they're trying to activate their imperms or whatever, Royal Decree could just shut it down altogether. So this is the side deck I'm running right now. This is the part that I think is really subject to change. I think a lot of people can take this and remodel and make something a lot better. I think I'll definitely be changing this as the format shapes up, especially when we're going into June, because who knows what's going to happen then with all the new cards we're going to be coming out. But as for the time being, this is what I'm running with, and I definitely recommend you guys test it out to do the same. So that's the deck. Please let me know what you guys think. I'm really happy with the way this deck turned out. Engage is finally at 3. We can all rejoice and just be happy. New cards are going to be coming very soon. Just probably like less than 2 months by the time you guys are watching this video. So that's something to really be excited for. If I do decide to drastically change the deck in between then, I will come on and do another profile. But for the time being, I think this profile is going to be really good for taking us from right now in April to going a little bit past June as well. So I recommend you guys come back to it, leave suggestions in the comments, and just kind of be really interactive and help each other on how we've been experimenting with this deck and what works and what doesn't. But for the time being, please don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel because we have plenty more content on the way. And there's loads of other Skystarter content just on this channel as well if you guys want to check that out too. For the time being, thanks for watching and we'll see you guys next time.